Heracon Publishing presents Near Death, Power of the Blood World, by Nancy Kilpatrick, narrated by Al Bernstein. Acknowledgements. Thanks to the many people who have generously given me technical, emotional, and spiritual support, including the late Edwin Alexander, Naomi Bennett, Rob Brodigam, Charles L. Grant, Bob Hadji, Eileen James, Eric Kupinen, Steve Cavalles, Claire Lang, Helen Lightbound, Robin McGarva, Risha Meinhard, Elizabeth Norton, Peter Reed, Giles Schnierl, Carl Schroeder, Caro Solis, Gary Solis, Jack Vecchio, John Wendt, Janine Youngson, and special thanks to Mike Killer Kilpatrick and Rebecca Todd. Part 1. The lunatic, the lover, and the poet are of imagination all compact. William Shakespeare. Chapter 1. The rented Vauxhall Nova lurched through the rusted wrought iron gates. It sped up the quarter-mile single-lane road to the circular driveway and turned right. The wrong way to turn in England. Behind the wheel a jittery blonde cracked bubble-gum and stared wide-eyed at the stately home. She was far enough from the city of Manchester that the headlights of her little car produced a beam under the fading sky. She could see that the place was enormous. 2 stories of stone spread out over a park-like untended lawn. Behind 4 white pillars stood an impressive double door. Flanking it right and left were windows. She counted 16 little panes of glass in each. This was her first time across the Atlantic, only her 3rd trip outside New York City, and, except for the governor's mansion, they'd driven past when she and 40 other girls had been recruited for a private party in Albany. Zero had never seen anything even remotely like this place. She switched the ignition off and unzipped her leather jacket. Under the front seat lay a black calfskin backpack, and she pulled it out. Inside she found a man's handkerchief, a cotton ball, a teaspoon, a lighter, and a clear plastic syringe with a needle already attached. A side pocket held a sandwich baggie of pale brown powder, rolled fat as a cigar. After dropping a few pinches of powder onto the spoon and adding Coca-Cola from the can she had been sipping from, Zero flicked on the lighter. Within seconds the combination of heat and coke dissolved the powder. She used the cotton ball and laid the tip of the hypodermic in the liquid, then quickly withdrew the plunger, sucking up the heroin. Once her upper arm had been tied off with the handkerchief, she probed the inside of her elbow. At first she couldn't get a vein up, but soon a nub of blue reluctantly bulged against the skin. With well-practiced movements she got the needle to penetrate the vein. Liquid fire roared through her body. As always, the blaze scorched her heart first, then her head. She fell back against the seat, sighing, waiting for the flames to singe her limbs. Time slipped past as the welcome numbness finally anesthetized her soul. His eyes snapped open to the blackness of the cellar. He had listened as tires crushed gravel, then to the engine die. There was only one, at least within the range he could sense. Oddly, it took nearly 30 minutes for the car door to open and then close. When her energy coalesced enough for action, Zero untied her arm. She shoved the baggie firmly down inside the black leather halter top she wore, dropped her purse into the backpack, and tossed the works into the glove compartment. Now she was ready. She stepped out of the car and adjusted the front of a wide leather belt slung across her hips, hooked together by a jewel-eyed silver lizard devouring its own tail. As she grabbed the backpack through the open door, checked her Leave It to Beaver watch. The little hand aimed at the beaver's heart. The big one divided his balls. 5 hours difference, the stewardess said. That makes it what? She thought. 7:30 in Manchester? She didn't bother adjusting the time. She wouldn't be staying long. Zero peered in one of the dirty front windows, too dark inside to see much. Just to be on the safe side, she used the rusted knocker shaped like a thorny-stemmed rose to bang on the massive door. She didn't expect anyone to answer, and no one did. She went around to the back and got in through a storage shed where the lock was busted. Inside the kitchen, she felt along the wall until she touched a light switch and flipped it. Nothing. "Great," she mumbled. Rooting in the backpack, finally locating the flashlight and the sheet of paper, she used the beam to reread the note. Instruction number 7 said, "Search the house, every room, no matter how small, starting from the basement up to the attic. Any door that's locked, including closets, try the skeleton keys. If they don't work, use the crowbar. Remember, you must arrive well after dark." She was too blasted to feel anything more than a flutter of nervousness. Still, she thought, if they weren't making me do this, I sure as hell wouldn't be in this stupid place. She found the door to the basement. Although the sun had set, technically it wasn't dark yet, but she wasn't about to wait. One invader, her sense pungent, sweet copper blood, skin slick with sour fear, and what? A bitter odor he could not place. He was not afraid, of course, simply curious. It made no sense. Surely there must be others. There are always others. But by fine focusing his senses, he detected only this woman, making her way steadily if slowly toward him, his curiosity already laced with anticipation, and that he knew would be dangerous for her. The old stairs to the basement creaked, and Zero's foot slipped through the rotting wood on the 3rd step. "Damn!" she yelled, the light careening around the cavernous room as she lost her balance. She scanned the layers of cobwebs and mounds of dust and dirt with her flashlight. The air was dank, mildewy. All of a sudden her arms stopped in mid-sweep and her heart began pounding hard. The center of the floor was taken up by a large stone coffin. "Give me a hit," she whispered, reaching automatically for the heroin. But the idea of being out here alone with no help in case she'd OD'd scared her, and she wasn't really hungry. When she finished what she'd come for, she would treat herself. Snorting's a waste of good dope, she thought, sprinkling a little of the drug onto her fist. As she sniffed the fine powder, the flashlight slipped from her grasp and bounced down the steps. So much heroin cruised her bloodstream that Zero didn't even get a buzz, but within seconds she convinced herself she felt calmer. When she reached the bottom of the steps, she picked up the light and cautiously approached the rectangular box. She ran the beam across one side and read the inscription. David Lyle Hardwick, 1863 to 1893. May God have mercy on the souls of poets. Zero forced herself to the side of the casket and placed everything that she was carrying on top, which left the room eerily lit. Bracing her feet, she shoved against the lid with all her might, trying to slide it off. The heavy lid edged along slowly, and pretty soon she was sweating. When the lid went as far as she needed to move it, she picked up the flashlight and peered in. "Oh, God, this is sick," she whispered. The body of a man dressed in old-fashioned clothing lay on moldy satin. Wavy below the shoulders, blonde hair framed a sculpted ashen face. Delicate pale hands were folded over his chest in a classical death pose. He did not seem to be breathing, but the note had told her that didn't mean much. Hands shaking, Zero reached into her bag and pulled out a mallet and a wooden stake. "Man, I can't do this," she cried. Through her heroin haze, the fear she heard in her voice almost reached her, and almost felt too close. She decided another morale booster wouldn't hurt, and had 2 quick snorts, dulling the terror before it could crowd her further. But finally, shaking, she positioned the sharp point of the stake where she thought his heart might be, raised the hammer, and swung. An icy hand sprang from the coffin and grabbed her by the throat. As the tools hit the concrete floor, she was forced backward, gasping for breath. The hand was followed by the rest of his body lifting out of the coffin. In the dim arc of the flashlight beam she caught a glimpse of blazing eyes and a face twisted with rage, like something coming to life out of a nightmare. Dreaming. I must be dreaming, he thought. She's returned. But within seconds the stark reality before him solidified. This was not Ariel, after all. Still, the girl was as pretty. A modern Aphrodite. Despite the heavy makeup, David thought, small, delicate, just like Ariel, with probably a lovely figure beneath all that leather. The colors, corn silk hair, and azure eyes were definitely not the same. They made her appear soft and feminine. But there was a not-so-sweet aura about her, too, a ragged edge that he couldn't put his finger on, something beyond the fact that she had tried to slam a thick chunk of hawthorn through his heart. Lord Byron's wry words drifted to mind. Perfect she was, but as perfection is, insipid in this naughty world of ours. He hurled her across the room. She slammed upright, front first, into the stone wall and spun around like a cornered rat to challenge him. Bastard! As he moved toward her, she looked utterly terrified, although her voice disguised it. You better watch yourself, man. Hey, look. Take it easy, okay? I got dope. We can party, have a time, you know? I can make you feel good. This was what he'd sensed. She was hard, brittle. That made her unpredictable, although no real danger to him. He grabbed her arm. His voice sounded raspy to his own ears. It had been a long time since he had spoken. Who are you? She stared at him, as if seeing a monster in a horror movie. He gave her a little shake to jolt her back to reality. The name's Zero. Hey, look! She reached between her breasts and eased out a plastic bag which she jiggled in his face. Smack, almost pure. She gave him a seductive grin, so obviously phony that it was pathetic. He nearly felt sorry for her. You're kind of cute, she said. Yeah, I could make you feel real fine. David snatched the bag out of her hand and pitched it into a dark corner. Hey, she screamed, you nuts? That's 3 grams, $1,500 worth. Know how long I gotta work for that shit? She swung at his face, slicing skin with razor-sharp nails, and would have drawn blood if there had been any despair. He shoved her up against the stones, fighting to control a violent urge. Why did you try to kill me? She glared, shaking her head a little from side to side. Suddenly her leg jackknifed. Her knee narrowly missed his groin. Without thinking, David, who, despite having committed unspeakable acts, had never struck a human being, shocked himself. He heard the sound of flesh meeting flesh ring through the hollow basement, and realized that his palm had made contact with her cheek. She did not look startled, but he was rattled by what he had just done. You've a pretty face, he hissed, struggling to get his emotions under control. Much more of this, and I don't imagine it will be as attractive. He hoped that would be enough to intimidate her, but all the while he was thinking, she's a masochist bent on luring me to sadism, and I'm participating. Has Ariel altered me that much? Forgive me, he said. Her eyes filled with contempt, and that made him angry again. You pricks are all alike. Well, there's nothing you can serve up I can't take, so fuck you. This time she landed a solid punch to his solar plexus. He pulled her wrist behind her back and yanked her across the room backward, worrying that she might enjoy being abused. And he understood his own nature enough to see that he could too easily accommodate such dark fantasies. But despite all that he might be, David had never been a brute, and he had no intention of becoming one. He would find another way of dealing with her. On the way out of the basement, he picked up the backpack. As she was pulled along backward, Zero noticed that the whole house was dusty and lived in. What a creepy place, she thought, like a haunted house. She knew she would be frightened by the fear, could not break through the solid barrier the drugs had created, and she was grateful. But that wall wouldn't hold for long, and when it crumbled, she would be in major trouble. The second-floor room he brought her into seemed as if no one had been inside it for half a century. A trail of their footprints followed them across the floor. He tossed her onto a large 4-poster bed. A cloud of dust from the dirty quilt sprang into the air. As she watched him bolt the door and light half a dozen candles, Zero touched her cheek, thinking to herself what a bastard he was. That thought dimmed as she looked around. Old chairs with blackened doilies over the backs and on the arms sat by the stone fireplace. There were wood tables all sizes and shapes, some with yellowed lace ruffles around the legs. Pictures in oval frames hung on filthy flowered wallpaper. The hardwood floor had a large braided carpet covering most of it, the wool too soiled to tell the color. What a pigsty, she thought. While he examined the contents of her backpack, she examined him. He was rumpled but noble-looking, like somebody from another era caught in a time warp. But a real psycho, she thought. Thinks he's Dracula. His skin was white as a piece of paper, and his clothes hung on him like he was anorexic. He looked too serious, a worrier. She'd bet he had looked that way when he was a kid, too. When he finished checking everything out, he checked her out, with startling hazel eyes. Your identification indicates your name is Kathleen Stevens. Everybody calls me Zero, she said with hostility. You're from New York. He read from her driver's license, his voice surprisingly gentle. 25 years of age, single. He dropped her wallet back into the bag. And a killer. Zero laughed. Takes one to know one, right? What? What are you, a vegetarian vampire? This note, with these instructions, who gave it to you? She took a deep breath and held it. She would never tell him, no matter what he did to her. I wish I had that H, she thought, as he walked to the bed. She tensed, ready for him to hit her again. Zero, you have a serious problem. He was trying to sound mean, but wasn't quite pulling it off. Are you so high you don't realize where you are? You've weighted in far over your head. Whoever you're protecting is hardly worth what can happen to you. She jutted her chin out, trying to look tough. Men are always more brutal if you let them see you're afraid, she thought. Who sent you? David felt stymied. He knew he sounded like a gangster from an old movie, but he was ill-prepared for so much resistance from a mortal. Ariel had left him unprepared for much of anything. This girl was too doped up to hypnotize. He had no idea how to decipher what this was all about, who had sent her. Short of thrashing her, and he certainly had no intention of resorting to that. Enough damage had been done. She's a pretty thing, he thought, much like a small, timid creature of the forest. He laughed suddenly at his own romanticism. Small and timid. A poisonous spider, he realized. He had tried to ignore her blood scent, but now it threatened to overwhelm him. A week had gone by since he had last fed. Unable to stop himself, he yanked her to her feet. Around her throat, she wore a black band with a silver fox's head attached. The fox's black jeweled eyes matched the eyes of the lizard. He ripped the choker away and had his teeth at her jugular before she realized what was happening. Oh, but he wanted to break the skin. The hot, sweet earthiness flowing beneath it called to him. That warmth would coat his mouth and slide down his throat and expand him, reviving the sparks of life. It was a sensation he never forgot, one he wished could last forever. The blood was the promise that kept him going. A thought crossed his mind. She may be so stoned she won't remember what I'm doing to her. But this blood was tainted with narcotics. He recognized the odor now. The drug, of course, explained such peculiar behavior. His efficient body could separate the nutrients out and expel the poison, but the heroin would temporarily disorient him. And at the moment, he could not afford to be out of control. This blood would not satisfy. More important, he refused to betray all that he believed in. Submitting to his obsession was debasing enough. If he must feed, and he knew he had no choice, it would be when and how and on whom he chose. Shaking, he stepped back. His teeth ached to the roots, and his jaw went into spasm. She saw his teeth, and a look of total disbelief flooded her face, a look he had seen on so many other faces. "Who sent you?" he demanded, allowing her a good view, hoping the shock would jolt the truth from her. She put a hand up to her neck, then took it away. Dry fingers did not reassure her. She stared at him with horror. "Tell me, Kathleen, why do you wish to suffer?" He felt stronger for his decision. His facial muscles began to relax, and the hunger tearing at his gut subsided a fraction. She's lovely. He decided, her colors as delicate and ethereal as those in a painting by Reynolds. Mesmerizing, like a cobra, he reminded himself. Suddenly her features shifted again, as though what she had just witnessed had been erased from her memory. She smiled up at him seductively. He detected something beyond the seductiveness, but had no idea what it could be. He toyed with the buttons on his shirt, rocked her hips against him, gazed into his eyes. Hers were glazed. Before he knew it, warm lips pressured his open. Her tongue plunged deep into his mouth, shocking him. He wondered if she was mad. She pulled her jacket off and unzipped the vest. Her breasts were full and round, the nipples erect fleshy beads. She moved his hand to them, and the warmth and texture of her skin and the throbbing beneath the surface whetted several of his appetites. His groin felt heavy, and the roof of his mouth dry. Perhaps if I show her affection, encourage her to trust me, she'll come around, he reasoned, half aware that he was rationalizing a reaction as completely inappropriate as what she was doing. She slipped off her leather pants and boots, then lay down and spread her legs wide. She looked both unprotected and at the same time invulnerable. Obviously, she's accustomed to doing this, he realized. Remember, he reminded himself sternly, she's a killer, a drug addict. She wants to destroy him. But then she was pulling him down, running her hands up under his shirt, undoing his pants. "You'd best tell me what I want to know," he said, his voice husky, the lack of determination in it blaring. "Maybe I will." She laughed. He watched her face, hoping to see vulnerability, but the image flashed to mind of a sponge, and he realized she was sucking up stimulation without really experiencing what was going on. Yet she seemed to be silently begging for more, and he had the uncomfortable notion that in her head she was berating him for being inadequately assertive. David moved away to lay on the bed beside her, dazed, feeling manipulated, studying her. She looks as though she's just sampled something that might be to her taste, but would definitely not be filling, he thought. "Let's go back to the basement and get the stuff," she said in a cheerful voice, starting to sit up. "Come on. This is really boring. You don't know how to have a good time. If that's as far as you can get with a fuck, you need a fix worse than me." He pressed her shoulders down, totally baffled by such a lack of emotion. "Boy, I could use some skag." She shivered, but he suspected it was not because she found him intimidating. "Who sent you?" His tone darkened. She giggled in his face. "Baby, you're so serious. And you ain't gonna get no answers from me no matter what you do. So why don't we just go back downstairs and try to loosen up? Got any needles around here?" He sucked in his upper lip and stared at her. She's like a creature out of a Burroughs novel, he thought. But finally he said, "If I give you the drugs, will you tell me?" "Sure," she said coyly. She reached toward his groin, but he pushed her hand away. "Man, are all you vampires so tense? Hey, what's it like being dead? Must be great, huh? No more problems. Will you do it to me?" "Come along." He pulled her up and out the door. They found the little bag of powder, and he watched her pour some onto her fist and sniff it, hands trembling. Her pupils, small despite the dim beam of the flashlight, contracted even further to pinpoints. "Want some?" she offered. "Who sent you, and where are the others?" She reached out a hand, her movements sluggish. "Come here, baby. Let me do you." He grabbed the bag, holding it just beyond her reach, although she wasn't sharp enough to get it away. "Nothing else seems to frighten you. Perhaps this will. I shall play keeper of the drug, and we'll see how long you can do without." She looked frightened. Finally, he thought, an appropriate emotion. It was an emotion that he would see intensify. Chapter 2. Son of a bitch! Bastard! Dickhead! As David entered the bathroom, a string of dark epithets spewed from the bed where he had left Kathleen tied by the wrist to the bedpost. Jerk off! She snarled in his direction. Her entire body was slick with sweat. He had spent the hour since sunset watching her desperation for heroin expand by the minute. The craving reminded him too much of his own. When he could stand her agony no longer, he had driven into Manchester to see what he could find out and to feed. He had been lucky. He found the girl sitting cross-legged on a tombstone in a cemetery, alone. She wore a tight black dress with a high lace collar and heavy black boots similar in style to those worn by construction workers. Goth was currently in vogue. He knew, a desperate longing by youth to revive romanticism in a cold, dispassionate world. Unfortunately, many of these neo-romantics exhibited a fascination with death. This girl wasn't the first he found at the cemetery. She looked depressed. "May I join you?" he asked. "Suit yourself, mate." Her tone was dull, her accent thick, middle class. From the Midlands, he suspected, probably working as a nanny. She turned to find him watching her. Dark kohl encircled her dark eyes, giving her a haunted appearance. She showed barely any of interest, but what there was he latched onto immediately. He was starving. Within moments the girl had fallen under his hypnotic spell. He lay her back against the stone and unbuttoned the black pearl buttons running down the synthetic lace that acted as a barrier protecting her throat. He tilted her head, and the angle forced the vein to stand out from her long, slim neck. He bent over her slim body and inhaled her sweet scent. His own veins felt shriveled, his bones a skeleton of ice holding up a papier-mâché form. His famished body trembled uncontrollably in anticipation. Everything around him disappeared, even the girl herself. The pulsing blue came into sharp focus. He moved to it as if sucked in by a powerful vortex that could not be withstood. And when his teeth pierced her flesh, and the hot river of life swirled over his tongue, his thoughts died, and he became only flesh. His shriveled veins plumped with vital fluid. His skeleton warmed and swelling heat radiated through muscle and turned his skin into living tissue. Refreshed, he rebuttoned the dress and left her to her dreams. And that was how he knew she would remember him, a mysterious stranger. If only he were real. Who had taken her to the brink of ecstasy, breaking up otherwise painful, dull existence. Once in the city, he learned that the Vauxhall Nova had been leased over the phone 2 nights before, for 24 hours only, by a woman identifying herself as Miss Stevens from New York. The car would be picked up at the airport office. Yesterday, an envelope arrived in the mail with more than enough cash to cover the rental, plus mileage and petrol. With the money was a typed 1-sentence note. 1-day car rental for Kathleen Stevens, unsigned. At the Manchester Airport Hertz office, the clerk who had been on the desk when the keys were picked up remembered Kathleen. Nothing unusual took place. At American Airlines, the computer could only confirm that a Kathleen Stevens arrived at Manchester Airport on Flight 503 yesterday afternoon, and had a return ticket to Kennedy that must be used within 7 days. Either she had arranged all this by herself, which seemed unlikely, or else whoever was behind it was in Manchester, or had help in England. Clearly, they were well organized. "Are you ready to reveal who sent you?" he asked, perching on the edge of the 4-poster. "Go fuck yourself." Her eyes were wild, hysterically tearing, yet she did not appear to be crying. "You're going to be rather ill soon, Kathleen. I can expunge your misery. Simply tell me what I wish to know." "You asshole! I wouldn't tell you the time of day." "You'll tell me. I can wait. I'm tremendously patient and have more time than you might imagine." A little white foam had gathered at the left corner of her mouth. She reached over to wipe it away, and she tried to bite his finger. "You're a hellcat, aren't you? And you're a faggot, if I ever saw one." He laughed as he got up to go sit by the fireplace. Along the way, he took a volume of Byron's poems from a bookshelf, blowing dust off the spine. Care to hear some poetry? Go to hell! He hadn't read anything more than a newspaper headline for 20 years. This particular book of Byron's, one that used to be a favorite, he had not even glanced at since returning to England. The soft ruby leather was worn in places. The impressions fit his hand. He opened to the ribbon marker and began to read silently. "'Twas thine own genius gave the final blow, and helped to plant the wound that laid thee low. So the struck eagle stretched upon the plain, no more through rolling clouds to soar again, viewed his own feather on the fatal dart, and winged the shaft that quivered in his heart. Please give me some, just a little. Be a good guy." David picked up a letter that had arrived recently and glanced at the return address, etching it into his memory. As he tapped the edges of the envelope on the table, he looked over at Kathleen. Her eyes were soft, hurt, like a wounded fawn's, but her lips had curled into an ugly sneer. He went back to the book. "What is the worst of woes that wait on age? What stamps the wrinkle deeper on the brow? To view each loved one blotted from life's page, and be alone on earth as I am now." By dawn she was groveling. "Please, I'll do anything. Anything you want. I'll give you good head. I can fuck you till you're crazy. Anything, just let me have some." He laid the book down. "Tell me who sent you." Her face and lips were pale. She looked even more fragile, vulnerable. Her voice had grown young like a little girl's. "Please, don't ask. I can't tell you that. I would if I could. And I'd give you the heroin if I could." "I'm begging you." She started to cry, again without making a sound. Initially, those silent tears had almost broken him, but they were always followed by insults and curses. He waited. "If you give me a little, I'll tell you everything you want to know. I don't even got to shoot, just a sniff." Large tears rolled down her temples and onto the pillow, already saturated with sweat and vomit. "Answers first." Kathleen clenched her jaw and thrashed around. A sound resembling a growl came out of her, and then, "Scum sucker! I hate your guts, you limp-dicked wimp!" David reshelved the book and walked to the door. "Feel free to make as much noise as you like. We're very isolated and you won't disturb my sleep. I'll rejoin you tomorrow evening in approximately 12 hours. "Don't leave me!" she cried desperately as he opened the door. "Please, I need it. I'll talk." He stopped. Her stomach was moving in and out, concave and convex, with the intensity of the pain, and he felt pity. "Well?" he finally said. "It was this other vampire. Male or female?" "Male, female, both, 2 of them." "Why did they send you?" "I guess they figured I'd have a better chance of killing you than they would." "And why is that, since my kind are far stronger than mortals?" "Why? How should I know? They didn't tell me." "But they instructed you to arrive well after dark. Yet you came before the sky had darkened fully." "Yeah, I was early. Can I have some junk now? I told you everything I know. I'm dying." "Why would they tell you to arrive after dark when it's common knowledge, particularly to those like myself, that vampires, as you call us, wake by night and sleep by day?" "Huh?" She looked confused, hysterical, her chest heaving, body shaking. "What rubbish!" He laughed. "I wouldn't recommend a career in poetry. You're very little imagination." She stared at him as though he were speaking Greek. At sunset he came into the room looking pale and drawn, but Zero didn't care. For the last God knows how long, her legs had been locked into a fetal position in an attempt to keep the discomfort to a minimum. She could only manage shallow breaths. Her body itched unbelievably, and she was starting to see things, unearthly shapes and hideous forms emerging from the wallpaper, things that she knew were not there, or at least she hoped weren't. The day had been sheer agony, but the knot of pain in her gut, the panic in her brain, and that gritty, grating feeling racking her nervous system had only increased. He said something, but at first she couldn't understand him. Finally, she put together the words, "Otherwise, it will be another long night and day for you. Can I have water?" He left the room and returned with a tumbler of water. He lifted her head gently so she could drink. His hand was icy. She found it difficult to swallow. Her tongue felt fat and swollen, and most of the liquid rolled back out of her to mouth. "Are you ready to answer my questions, Kathleen?" Zero knew that she couldn't go on. She could hardly speak. She nodded, letting him know she had given up. He sat by the bed waiting. "A guy came up to me in a bar." "Where?" "Alphabet City." "And where's that?" "Lower East Side, near East Houston." "His name?" "Dennis. I heard somebody call him Dennis." Another excruciating ache cracked through her. Zero gathered her knees up even closer to her chest, crying silently, groaning and shaking until the cold finger of death no longer stroked her backbone. "Please, give me just a taste," she begged in a small voice. "Talk first." She moaned and felt her lips tremble, but finally she said, "He told me I had to come here, gave me the plane ticket, money, and instructions, and said the car would be waiting. The backpack was in it." "Why did he do that, Kathleen?" "Don't know." He started to get up. "Please, I'm not lying." She couldn't tell whether or not he believed her. "Then what?" "I came here. You know the rest." "What else did he give you?" Suddenly her entire body convulsed. Now she had diarrhea too. The brief spasms left her panting. He's starting to look funny, scary, like something that shouldn't be in his world, she thought. And the very thought increased her panic. She trembled violently. "What else did he give you, Kathleen?" "What else? Nothing." "Didn't he give you the heroin?" "Yeah, that." "And who is this Dennis?" "I seen him around, but I never met him. He just came up to me. He knew my name." As she watched David, she now realized that he was pale and hungry-looking, and for the first time the idea that he could actually be what he claimed to be scared her more than the hallucinations. "Can I have some more water?" He gave her some and then said, "You've answered adequately except for why he wants me extinguished." "Look, I don't know why. He didn't say. But you do know why you did as he told." Zero prayed for the ceiling to just cave in and crush her to death. But she'd wished for death more than once during the long day and knew from a lifetime of experience that she was not the type who was likely to be on the receiving end of a miracle. "Please, just a hit. Just one. I can't take no more." Tears fell helplessly from her eyes. She was not surprised that they didn't move him. "There's more to this than the drugs. You could have simply kept them. How did he persuade you to come here? To kill?" "You're hard," she said bitterly. "You look like a noodle but got balls like a diesel driver." He smiled a little. "Refreshing similes. Perhaps he might be a poet after all." Her body jerked again and waited it out, but as soon as the convulsing subsided, he asked, "How is he blackmailing you?" "Oh, God!" she wailed. Tears gushed from her eyes. "Please! He said he'd kill me if I tell. Don't make me tell." But finally a strange calm of self-preservation settled over Zero, and she knew beyond any doubt that she was going to tell him everything. She couldn't make it through another hour. And maybe it doesn't matter anymore, she thought, trying to justify the betrayal. "He's got my kid brother. He said if I didn't come here and stake you, Bobby'll die. That's it. That's all I know. Please, give me some skag." David saw in her eyes that she spoke the truth, as much of the truth as could be expected from the twisted mind of a desperate junkie. He paced the room. It simply did not make sense. Who would want to kill him? His own kind knew it was impossible. at least the way this had been arranged. And why send a mortal woman, an unreliable addict, and the instructions after dark? Those aware that this was his home, he had called friend. He could not believe any of them would try to harm him. Who was this Dennis? Who knew what he was, where to find him, and yet was so inept? "Where's the dope you promised?" she whined. "She's far too pretty to be a dope fiend," he concluded. "I shall do you a tremendous favor. I'm prepared to help you kick your habit, if my recall of the terminology is correct." Her eyes grew large and round. The capillaries in her face filled, reddening the skin just before she screamed. Her words ran together into gibberish. She thrashed her legs, and white foam frothed from between her teeth. He went to the bed and laid a comforting hand on her contorted, writhing body and another on her forehead. A pink rash peppered her stomach and chest during the 10 minutes the convulsion lasted. And when she calmed enough to speak, she screeched, "Asshole! Lying cocksucker asshole! You promised!" "No, Kathleen, I never promised I'd give you the drug. I promised I would end your misery. There are only 2 ways I can accomplish that. I can drain all your blood and you'll die, or I can wait this out with you. I'm going to help you because I'm taking you to New York with me to find this Dennis, and I want you clear-minded for that. And also because I'm a humanitarian. At least, that was the case before I was forced to become a predator." Wet hairs matted to her forehead. Her glassy eyes looked crazed. The sweat on her body was at the same time slick and gritty. She was pale, weak, vulnerable, pathetic, near death even. He was reminded of Byron's painful words. "And if I laugh at any mortal thing, 'tis that I may not weep." But despite her frailty, she still managed to rouse herself enough to shriek out a robust, "Don't kid yourself about being human, buddy. You're the goddamn son of some sorry bitch goddess." Chapter 3. 2 nights later, after horrifying nightmarish hallucinations, delirium, tremors, hysteria, and agonies that she could hardly believe she had lived through, once the exhausted sun collapsed below the horizon, David finally let her up from the bed. The sheets were encrusted with everything that had recently been inside her. "I've put 2 pails of well water in the lavatory," Zero heard him say. "If you like, you may build a fire and heat it. The plumbing's been shut a decade ago." Her head reeled. She staggered across the room but collapsed before she could reach the bathroom door. He picked her up, around the waist as if she were light as cotton candy, and sat her on the edge of the tub. Dried vomit, urine, and feces caked her skin. She wondered how he could stand the smell when she barely could. He wedged the cloth into one of her hands, which dangled limply at her side. Her shoulders caved inward and her head hung low. She felt boneless, a life-size Raggedy Ann, and knew she looked like one too. After a few minutes she sighed and leaned forward, finding just enough energy to dip the cloth into the cold water. The iciness shocked her, and she inhaled sharply. Pressed the cloth to her face and neck, and kept repeating the procedure, and soon was as clean as possible under the circumstances. After she rinsed her mouth and squeezed water over her head, she felt a little more alive, but not necessarily better. She looked up. He was standing in the doorway, unmoving. She shivered. "Please dress yourself." He handed her a towel. When she was dry, she put on her clothes and let him half lead, half carry her to the car. He seat-belted her in as if she were a small child, and she sat stunned while he drove into Manchester. The night looked flat and black to Zero, the sky a mural of dark cardboard flecked with white dots, and a not-quite-round colored-in circle. Just outside the city limits, he pulled off onto a well-hidden dirt road. After he tied and gagged her, he locked her in the trunk of the car. Zero felt nothing. She lay in the darkness, dazed, in a mindless, timeless state. Her thoughts were snippets strung together, apparently meaningless. Images superimposed on one another. Bobby, her father, a nameless John she had picked up, David. Each took on the quality of a dream, and she, the dreamer, she was ignorant of any connection between the images. She had no idea how long he had been gone, a minute or a day. But when he returned, his face was flushed, and he did not look so gaunt. It was reassuring. What was not reassuring were the flecks of red down the front of his shirt. She struggled to get her mind around what was obviously blood, because the idea that he really was a vampire just would not play. "Behave yourself, I have no desire to harm you," he told her 10 minutes later as they entered the car rental's office. She was too deflated from depression and exhaustion to cause trouble. She sat quietly when he returned the car keys and paid for the extra days. She wondered what would happen when they got to New York, if they would find Dennis. She thought about Bobby and felt really sad, and then she thought about how she could score some H fast. At a travel agency down the street, David purchased a one-way ticket to Kennedy for himself and confirmed her seat. "The airplane departs in 2 hours. We've time to shop and for you to eat," he said. "I ain't hungry." "Still, you'll eat. You haven't had a thing but water for at least 4 days, probably longer." They stopped in a McDonald's where he bought her a Big Mac, a salad, and 2 drinks. She was dehydrated and sucked all the liquid from 1 cup immediately, but didn't even unwrap the burger or open the salad container. He nodded at the food. "Don't want it." "Come along, then," he said, as though coaxing a stubborn child. "There's a cemetery across the road, which is always deserted, at least by the living. I'll feed you by hand. Although you may not find eating amidst the dead appetizing, still no one will hear you protest." He stood. "No, wait. I'll eat. Just give me time." He sat down again. While she choked down a bite of the hamburger and her stomach made a major decision about accepting it, Zero watched him. He was looking around the restaurant as if he had never seen the inside of a McDonald's before. He wore the same shirt, a blousy high-neck number, not too clean, especially with the added crimson stains, blue wool tapered pants, a vest, and old-fashioned shoes with buckles. The double-breasted jacket with the velvet shawl collar had been overdoing it, and she was glad he'd left that behind. His fair hair was washed and neatly combed behind his ears, but it hung well below his broad shoulders. He still looks like somebody out of an old photograph, she thought. Boring. "How come you think you're a vampire?" He looked back at her so directly and with such emotion-packed eyes that she felt uncomfortable. She was the one usually giving the direct looks. Many people cement reality into place before their first decade of life. Accepting anything outside a preconceived notion appears difficult, if not impossible. "What's that mean?" "I mean that I am what I am and I exist." He paused as if searching for the right words to make her understand. "Obviously, I am not dead in the usual sense of the word. Crosses and garlic do not repel me. I can see my reflection in mirrors. But my skin and eyes are photosensitive, and I require liquids, blood, to survive. The Dracula stories and other vampire myths are largely rubbish. The line dividing fantasy and fact is often a mere wrinkle. It would be best to think of me as belonging to a Homo sapien-like species." "You've been alive since 1860-something?" she asked, sipping the second drink, half trying to make sense out of this information, half humoring him so she could set him up and escape. But she watched him closely. She met nutcases before. His golden brown eyes softened further. With less of a jaw, he could have been a girl. In fact, he seemed generally sensitive, but she sensed that whatever he was or thought he was, he could be tough. "I was born in 1863. The first 30 years of my life followed a relatively normal course for one of my class, and predictable. I came down at Cambridge with a first. My parents seemed reasonably pleased with their only offspring. I aspired to be a poet, and did publish the odd sonnet, although I suspect, career-wise, a chair on the faculty of another university would have been my destiny. But fate, cruel as she can be, intervened. How did you get, like you are?" He shifted a little, but she noticed. One evening while in London on my return to my hotel from a bout of drinking with an old school chum, I stumbled onto the wrong street at the wrong moment. I was attacked. The creature, fanged, hideous, inhumanly strong, pinned me to the cobblestones. He drew much of my blood before I could begin to utter a cry for help. His face was shrouded in shadow, but I shall never forget him. The violence, the madness-streaked features. He could have killed me. Should have, really, but something perverse in his nature inspired him to force me to consume his blood. For what purpose? I've yet to understand. I naturally was overwhelmed by fear and impotent in rage. I could do nothing but submit. When I awoke the following night, I was alone in agonizing pain. He's definitely Lala, she thought, but asked, "You know this guy?" I'd not seen before, nor have I since. I've been as I am now since the year 1893. That outfit from then? He looked down at his shirt and smiled. She got the feeling he was relieved to change the subject. This is attire Lord Byron himself would have likely worn circa the early 1800s. But I purchased it 20 years ago at a jumble sale. It was a theatrical costume, but fit well with the 1960s, just as it suited me. How come you still wear it? Are you an ex-hippie or something? She had managed to swallow 3 bites of the hamburger and none of the salad. She laid the rest of the Big Mac down and shoved it across the table. Consume at least half of that, and we dine on the grave of a 19th century painter. She picked up the burger and examined it. The thought of eating any more made her want to puke, but the fear of eating in a cemetery overcame that urge. She sighed before taking a little bite, chewing it to mush. "So, why do you dress like that?" "I do not venture out often any more," he said. "Not for the last few decades. It amuses me to sleep in a coffin and act the role of the Nosferatu. I have quite a romantic streak." "Sounds perverted," she said, taking another small bite. He laughed. "Probably." She caught a glimpse of 2 pointed teeth and blinked in disbelief. I'm still hallucinating, she thought. When what she ate seemed to satisfy him, they left and caught a taxi. "I require your help," he told her. "As I said, I've been largely disconnected from the world. I need to appear current. Perhaps you will instruct me as to what clothing is in vogue." They went into several shops, and she helped him pick out 2 pairs of black leather pants, several black t-shirts, black boots, and a black leather jacket. He examined everything as though he'd rarely been shopping. "You got money for all this?" she asked. "I've plenty of money." "Yeah? Like how much?" £50,000 with me. "Not in cash." "Yes. Ain't you never heard of banking machines? Man, you can get mugged." He laughed, adjusting the short jacket. He's definitely weird, she decided, really weird. She had never met a guy like him. But then she never met a vampire before either. Of course, she didn't believe he was a vampire. She met a lot of guys who said they were something they weren't. Hell, she'd even met a guy in the village once who said he changed into a werewolf every full moon. Well, he was hairy enough. Besides, David was breathing, so he was alive, just a little pale and old-fashioned. But the new clothes were helping. She realized she wasn't afraid of him anymore. In fact, she felt excited. The whole thing was taking on the feel of an adventure. He's starting to look okay, she decided, even kind of cute. "Ever wore leather before?" she asked, fingering a peaked leather cap with a